So I just saw this post on Twitter that shows a conversation between a freelancer and one of his customers. And this is a situation that happens to freelancers all the time. So I want to break down what's going on and give some insight to how you can handle something like this and how I've handled it in the past. So in the post, Nat posts a picture of an email thread, and it looks like at one point the customer reached out to Nat and is asking for some kind of services. So Nat responds with, what's your budget for this project? And this is very common. You're trying to understand your customer. You want to know if they're a serious customer, can they afford your services, and maybe how serious they are about the project and what they're willing to do here. So you're trying to understand something before you give them a quote. Now, the customer responds with, what's your price? And this creates kind of an annoying situation for both people. And it's kind of like a standoff here between you and the customer. And nobody wants to show their cards first because both people are trying to get something out of this deal. In this case, Nat is trying to make the most amount of money for his time, and the customer is trying to get the most amount of work for their money. And this is common. You can't get upset about this because we all try to negotiate. We try to negotiate when we're buying something online maybe, or when we go to a market. We're trying to bargain for something, so you can't get frustrated with this. Just try to understand it and know how to respond. Now, reading through the comments in this Twitter post, it's kind of funny because everyone's doing those memes from Spider-Man where they're all pointing a gun at each other, or from The Office. And in those comments, along with all those funny memes, I saw a comment that said, the customer is trying to underbid you. And that's the comment I first wanted to respond to, because that creates a very bad, I guess, insight or look to how you respond to this customer. Because from what I'm seeing, the customer is just trying to negotiate. And if you see them as someone that's trying to screw you over, you're going to respond in a bad way and probably not close that deal. So I would highly recommend try to understand them as opposed to see them as hostile. From what I'm seeing, I don't see any hostility. So what Nat did is, Nat looks like he responded. He actually posted this on Twitter. It looks like Nat responded with two prices to his customer, or to this person, and the customer didn't respond. So he probably gave some kind of price range. The customer didn't respond. And that's actually one good approach here. That's what I would do too, or one way that I would do things. And this is really good for filtering out a customer. When you're trying to filter them out, you want to make sure that you get any bad customers or any customers that are just looking for the lowest deal. You want to filter those out and not waste your time for anybody that you don't want to work with. So a price range is one way that you can go about doing this. Now, another way, before I actually start dealing with the customer, I might try to explain why I need their budget. And in one case, I would say something like, when I understand your budget, I want to know how serious you are about this. I want to know how far we can go so I can actually give you a price, because it's kind of hard to actually, I guess, bid somebody if you have no idea how serious they are about a project. So try to explain why you need that budget and help them understand. Now, if that doesn't work and they're still not willing to tell you their budget, what you could try to do is use the lowest price option to set some kind of baseline and anchor to at least work off of that and see if this client's even worth your time before you maybe give them some kind of range. So imagine that you think that the project that they're asking you to do is worth about $5,000. Maybe you don't have all the insights, but you take a look at it and that's kind of what you're estimating on, but you don't want to expose that just yet. So you're in the negotiation process. So what you could do, or at least this is what I've done, is I would take the lowest amount that I'm willing to work on that project for. So imagine that I think it's worth $5,000, but at a minimum, I would work for at least $3,500. That's the lowest amount. It doesn't mean that that's what I'm going to do it for, but that's the lowest amount before I set a cutoff and I say, you know what, under that, it's not worth my time, I'm leaving. So you set that baseline, and instead of telling the client that that's what your minimum is, because the second you tell them what your minimum is, they're going to start using that against you and try to drive you down to that range. So what you're going to do is you take that number and you ask them questions like, do you at least have $3,500 to start this project? Or do you have that in your budget to at least put some kind of down payment for this? You don't want to scare them and say that that's the down payment and then the project's going to be way more than that, but you set that as some kind of starting point and you can gauge their reaction to that response and at least see if that's a place that you can start. If they're shocked by that response and they automatically get hesitant and they don't want to deal with that, then you walk away because they don't have enough money. But if they at least start there, you can gauge their response and see if you can go higher than that and try to get above your ideal range, but use that as a starting point. Just don't let them know that that's your starting price. It's a negotiation tactic. It's like poker. So you're trying to use keywords like starting with, like a down payment or some kind of initial investment into this. and try to get some more insight in their business. If you don't want to spend too much time on that, maybe you cut them off at that first part, but try to get some insight and maybe learn more about their business. That can also help. But I know a lot of times you don't want to go too far before you at least start that negotiation process. So that's my insight into that. It was a cool post. I really liked it. I'm interested in seeing everyone else's responses. If you have a different way of doing this, please put that in the comments. I definitely would love to see how you all deal with this too. So thanks for watching this video. I'll see you all in another one.